15 minutes late. What's happening here with the cameras, the lights? Everything has changed. We have a new library behind us. And there's a Christmas feel. How are you guys? How are you?
It was an early Christmas present from his mama. She got us a bookcase because he has so many books, and he gets these books from Italy, and we have nowhere to put them, so we had to get another bookcase.
Which is good, though. It's good. It's handy. It's handy, especially when you're discussing like today, Henry Kissinger. Yes, we are at episode number 44, exploring the Illuminati Occult, part 44, Leo and Christy Zagami. Welcome. We were a bit late today, eh?
Sorry, guys.
I know. We just couldn't get it to work. It was just like we were trying, but okay, now it's all fine. It's all fine, and we are here thanks to our sponsors.
I have a lot of names.
That's good. That's good. We need that. Okay. Give us the name of the sponsors.
You guys ready? Okay, our donators this week are Philippe Feller, Bruce Kodish, Lillian Porter, God's Truth War, Ellen Sukatre, John Holtzel, Avina Hamitiman. I'm sorry if I say her name wrong. Avina Hamitiman. I think that's right. Okay, Corey Chavez, Margarizada Minza, Dennis Bolanos Enriquez. Bolanos Enriquez.
You're chopping his name in Latin. It's a Latin name. It's basically an Hispanic name. No, Demis Bolanos Enriquez.
That's what I said.
Okay, but we need to pronounce it in a good way. So welcome. As the lights tend to go down now, because we are now in closer to the closer moment of darkness, which is the winter solstice, then starts again rising the sun. But now that's maybe why the lights, we had to work out with the lights around before starting the show. Anyway, today's show is a very important one, especially coming after the last week, the success of last week's show dedicated to the protocols of the Elders of Zion, which we have invited everyone to reinterpret as the protocols of the Sabbatean Frankists of Zion eventually. And Henry Kissinger, we can clearly say that this guy is a typical example of the Sabbatean Frankist heresy. In fact, he was actually excommunicated at one point by a rabbinical council. That is one of the things that we will discuss together with many others, because he was a very active member of the Bohemian Club and the Bohemian Grove Retreat. He was a very active member of the Bilderberg Club. He was a very active member of the World Economic Forum, being also the mentor of Klaus Schwab, and he was also involved with Italy and the Monte Carlo Lodge of the P2. So today we have so much to discuss for one man who died this week at the tender age of 100, one of the most evil men on the planet.
Why? Why is he so evil? You want to know?
You need to know. Okay, so first of all, if you want to help out the Leo Zagami show, just like this week's sponsors, you can decide or not to have your name, of course, mentioned during the show. This is your complete choice. In the case you don't want to be mentioned, just let us know with a side note. Our donations can be the donations can be sent through GoFundMe and through Cash App. So I'm gonna put it here on the screen, and people, of course, of goodwill can maybe help us out for the next week's episode. Every week we try to dig deep in a subject, and we dig the deepest possible, like nobody else. So the subject of a guy like Henry Kissinger is very, very vast. The dance macabre, increase the dances, and we all dance.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, she's done. Today is December 2 of the year of the Lord 2023. Like we said a few days ago, Henry Kissinger died. He's considered a great friend by China. At the same time, he was working with the hawks of the neocon conservatives, always behind the scene, involved beyond parties in what is really the affairs of the New World Order, because that's what we are discussing here, the affairs of the New World Order, with one of his most eminent representatives. And I think that is important to start this show by playing maybe a track that can in some way bring us the spirit of the Bohemian Club, the spirit of Henry Kissinger. And it's a song actually that was sung at the Grove there during one of their yearly retreats. There is, of course, the main retreat they do in the middle of July, and then there is this lower and upper jink, which are like kind of picnics the Bohemian clubbers do at their Grove. And in one of these events, in front of Henry Kissinger, and actually Henry Kissinger got even on stage at one point, he participated while all the Grovers were assisting, dancing on stage, and the artists in questions were singing this song. Now, the artists in question signed themselves as Jonathan White and Jeff Wong. The song is It Ain't No Good, and I like it that way. When you're gonna hear this track, I think you're gonna really understand the spirit of this man and why I said he was evil.
When you're bad. Yes, I'm so good at being bad, aren't I? I've got a story to tell you, boys, so listen to what I say. I'm hard-hearted. The awful things I've started make me what I am today. I was a really bad baby, boys. The original, terrible too. My evil ways were cursory, set fire to the nursery, and barbecued the nanny too. I'm no good, and I like it that way. We bad guys have such fun, lying and stealing. What a good feeling, looking out for number one. I'm glad, and I'm bad. Really, really bad. I put a bee in baby brother's bonnet and took his candy while he cried. An adolescent firebrand, I smuggled snakes to Ireland, something that I did with pride. I made the London Bridge fall down. I made the Tower of Pisa lean. With my style sardonic, I spread the plague bubonic. By the time I was 17.
As you always say, boss, everything's better with bubonic on it.
Demi-Modo, shut up while I'm singing. I'm no good, and I like it that way. We bad guys have such fun. Lying and stealing, what a good feeling. Looking out for number one. Looking out for number one.
So this was basically sung at the Bohemian Grove in front of
I can't
Henry
believe they sang
Kissinger.
that to him.
I mean, Heinz Alfred Kissinger. You don't know who this guy is. I mean, this guy is like the ultimate evildoer. I have described him very much in volume 7 of my Confessions, but I started to actually expose him since volume 1. In volume 7, though, I give you all the nitty-gritty and all the inside details of his connections with Klaus Schwab, who he was, of course, the mentor of Klaus Schwab. So, I mean, this guy has been one of the protagonists up until the end of the Bohemian Grove. I mean, he participated this year in the summer. He gave a speech. The title of this speech that he gave this year at the Bohemian Grove was The First 100 Years. I mean, of course, it's 100 years, but also his story, it's really entrenched with controversy. In fact, even when they presented him, at the various, this last couple of days when he appeared on the news, they never really said Henry Kissinger, what a wonderful guy. They always said Henry Kissinger, a controversial guy who half of the people hate, half of the people love. I don't know who are the people who love him, because there's very little to love. He gave his speech, like I said, this year, and we have to thank the friends of Resist the Grove who have done some filming at the arrival of Henry Kissinger this year at the Bohemian Grove in the middle of July. So this year, Henry Kissinger gave his speech alongside Kissinger in front of this little lake, because these are the lakeside, the mythical lakeside talks of the Bohemian clubbers. There was Jerry Brown, Conan O'Brien, Karl Rove, Newt Gingrich, Jeb Bush, Peter Gallagher, and of course all the various representatives of the military-industrial complex. And they all arrived at the Grove this from July 2021.
Cheers. Fuck you. Yeah.
Beware.
You can hear that they were, of course, testing, rehearsing their play. I actually have an old rehearsal of the Bohemian Grove play to show you guys from a black and white era. Here we go. So we have basically the infamous scene that then was filmed in the middle of the night also by Alex Jones. This time, this is from, I think, the 1940s or 30s. They are rehearsing basically the ritual. That is the infamous cremation of care ritual, which we have all heard about. And it is particularly appreciated. This is a side of the grove while they are rehearsing. You are, of course, watching all this on the Leo Zagami show, exploring the Illuminati Occult Part 44, Henry Kissinger.
Can't believe that you didn't bring stuff. We're gonna go to this blue dog. Act like that.
Gotta go to fucking Bartlett's.
Gotta go to Bartlett's and get us this. What's going on?
How's it going, gentlemen?
Cool. Yeah, just jacking off.
Oh, good. It's always nice to be good at something.
Yeah.
Gotta master something.
Gordon Biersch there again?
Say hi to Gordon. You lush.
Like a concern to be able to be alright. John Burnett is the man of file, and that man is the hero file. I find all these creeps so vile, cause of the line they cross to defile. It's just no excuse. Under 18, it's abuse.
A lot of people participated to the last speech by Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger is a guy who has been with us for a very long time, a member of, I repeat, the Bohemian Club, a guy who actually started the World Economic Forum. I mean, I'm not talking about just a guy. When you read Volume 7, you will understand how important this figure has been for the World Economic Forum. But I can just give you a preview of one of the many important sources of information I used that expose how Klaus Schwab really came into the world thanks to this Henry Kissinger, this extremely controversial figure. So, Christy, why don't you read this?
Okay. Dr. Klaus Schwab, or How the CFR Taught Me to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb.
It's a bit like a Dr. Strangelove, love the atomic bomb.
The World Economic Forum wasn't simply the brainchild of Klaus Schwab, but was actually born out of a CIA-funded Harvard program headed by Henry Kissinger and pushed to fruition by John Kenneth Galbraith and the real Dr. and the real Dr. Strangelove, Herman Kahn. This is the amazing story behind the real men who recruited Klaus Schwab, who helped him create the World Economic Forum, and who taught him to stop worrying and love the bomb.
Love the bomb! Here one image of Henry Kissinger and Klaus Schwab, but of course we can go to a much earlier image of Klaus Schwab, really young compared to now. I mean, this guy was probably born old because he looks old already back then. But his mentor was definitely Henry Kissinger, a socialist, because that's what he was. And at the same time, somebody who had also a very important role in the Bilderberg Club. So he never missed the Bilderberg Club. So this guy went from one meeting of the Illuminati to the other meeting of the Illuminati. He didn't really have a life. He just had a meeting after the other. He was very controversial. And I want to show, though, a song, a brief song that was done about Henry Kissinger. It's not really a song. It's a couple of notes put together, but it's entitled Henry Kiss My Assenger by MDC. Here we go.
Henry Kiss My Assenger! Henry Kiss My Assenger! Henry Kiss My Assenger! Henry Kiss My Assenger! Henry Kiss My Assenger!
So, Henry Kiss My Assenger by the millions of damn Christians. That is basically the name of this group. One doesn't know who is more evil. But, however, we are here to explain who this guy is because he's a very important player. And one of his first interviews ever was done when he brought into the world his own strategy of tension using nuclear, of course, the growing nuclear arsenal of the United States of America. It was him, actually. I mean, when you read, especially World Order, you really learn a lot about world history. And so, Christy, you should read what he writes here in the back of the book, which just gives us an idea of his idea of history.
Okay. Long ago in youth, I was brash enough to think myself able to pronounce on the meaning of history. I now know that history's meaning is a matter to be discovered, not declared. It is a question we must attempt to answer as best we can in recognition that it will remain open to debate, that each generation will be judged by whether the greatest, most consequential issues of the human condition have been faced, and that decisions to meet these challenges must be taken by statesmen before it is possible to know what the outcome may be.
And now, let's go back to the 1950s, when Henry Kissinger started his career. I mean, so long ago. Can you imagine? 1958. Wow.
This is Professor Henry Kissinger, a military and political analyst with a revolutionary concept of nuclear war and a constructive concept for peace. He's a man whose ideas have prompted the highest officials of our government to re-evaluate our defense policies. We'll get his criticisms of our current strategies in war and peace in just a moment.
The Mike Wallace Interview, presented by the American Broadcasting Company in association with the Fund for the Republic, brings you a special television series discussing the problems of survival and freedom in America.
Good evening, I'm Mike Wallace. Tonight, we'll tackle the immediate issue that will decide the fate of our freedom, certainly, and possibly even of our survival. We'll discuss the conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union and the chances of war. Our guest, Professor Henry Kissinger, Associate Director of the Center for International Affairs at Harvard University, and the man whose recent proposals substantially influenced President Eisenhower's plan for military reorganization. Dr. Kissinger, last year, your attack on our foreign and military policies was apparently found so disturbing that the New York Times carried this front-page story. They said, for the first time since President Eisenhower took office, officials at the highest government levels are displaying interest in the theory of the little or limited war. the theory of massive retaliation is being re-examined. That was a year ago. What has come of the re-examination?
I think the theory has been re-examined, the practice has not been.
The theory has been found wanting then?
The theory has been found wanting, but I don't think we have made the effort or spent the money or made the sacrifices necessary for to get a capability for limited war.
Well now, in order to better understand your proposal for limited war, perhaps it would be well for you to define what you understand to be our current United States military policy. What is our military policy?
Well, our current military policy is based on the doctrine of massive retaliation, that we threaten an all-out attack on the Soviet Union in case the Soviet Union engages in aggression anywhere. This means that against almost any form of attack, we base our policy on a threat that will involve the destruction of all mankind. And this is too risky and I think too expensive.
You obviously think it's wrong, dangerous to our security. I wonder if you would expand on that. Just because of what you say, the risk, and just because of the expense, it is not worthwhile?
No, it is. What it will mean is that in every crisis, an American president will have to make the choice whether a given objective is worth the destruction of American cities. The American president will have to decide whether Beirut, or whatever the issue may be, is worth 30 million American lives. In practice, I'm afraid the American president will have to decide that it is not worth it, and it will therefore encourage the piecemeal taking over of the world by Soviet aggression.
Because you believe the Soviets understand our unwillingness or inability, certainly our unwillingness to wage an all-out war?
Now, first of all, it's important to explain why Henry Kissinger is so important, because, you know, Christie, for example, even if she grew up really in the Henry Kissinger era in the 70s, he was really at the most of his power, no? But very few people understand why he's so influential. Because this guy is not he wasn't a multi-millionaire, a billionaire.
So why was he so
He
influential?
actually went to New York when he was 15 from Germany, a Jewish person, of course, persecuted as many Jews in Germany, where he grew up. He actually met later on, though, somebody who was also going to be very influential, and that will be Klaus Schwab. But Klaus Schwab, like we said, is just one of his creations because he has influenced everything and everybody. And he went on influencing everything and everybody until the very end. So, I mean, the last interview which I have here is probably from like a few weeks ago, and he was still continuing in his constant, let's say, manipulation games. Of course, he was no longer in an official capacity. But last year, for example, he went to China. He was received like a hero, like a head of state by Xi Jinping in a moment in which Americans couldn't even go there because he wouldn't even receive them. And instead, he will be and then he goes on and talks about it here. Brief history of how this whole China thing came together. He does a secret trip in 1971. He actually flies secretly from, I think it was maybe Pakistan, goes into China, and then will arrange this further meetings that will, of course, see the arrival of Nixon for the first time in China and the opening of a new relation. Why was it so important? Because regardless of the ideology, Nixon said we need to bring further away from Russia China, otherwise, we could be losing a potential ally. He was unscrupulous. He was somebody who coined the realpolitik, about American exceptionalism, but is also the most famous and controversial diplomat. Machiavelli, for him, and the prince was not really that much. I mean, I will show you a mention of Machiavelli's prince, who he says it was a little, I mean, this guy is truly Machiavellic, but Machiavellic on steroids. Henry Kissinger.
Dr. Kissinger, thank you for joining us today to look at what's happening in the US-China relationship and what it means for countries in the middle to navigate some of those tensions. But first of all, I just wanted to start by taking a bit of a step back. We've seen a lot of people likening the current situation, the current tensions, to a new Cold War. But as someone who was in the room watching a lot of the original Cold War unfold, what do you make of that comparison?
When I started getting involved in China relationship, we had no contact with China for 25 years as a government, and very few private people. So I had the conventional view that China was very similar to the Soviet Union. And one of my experiences in dealing with China now over more than 50 years is that they represent a distinct culture, has great continuity and survival ability. So in the process, I had to adjust my own thinking. At first, we thought of China as a balancing element against the Soviet Union. Now we find ourselves in a world where Russia and the Soviet and China close allies publicly anyway. So that's a new situation. When we started relations with China, the Chinese economy was that of a developing country.
So here we have the master manipulator. We're talking about Henry Kissinger. If you just put into Google Henry Kissinger, China, summer 2023, then you get also all the latest from the Chinese that, of course, mourn Kissinger. China mourns Kissinger, a most valued friend. And then again, Kissinger, a player on the world stage until the very end. When China's leaders wanted to send a message to the Biden administration last summer, they did what came naturally. They called Henry Kissinger. China mourns the death of Henry Kissinger and all this. So who was this Henry Kissinger? This Henry Kissinger was a very powerful individual, guys. He was also a member of the Monte Carlo Lodge, which I was a member. And I never had the opportunity to meet him because by the time I arrived in the Monte Carlo Lodge, he will no longer attend their meetings. But he was definitely somebody who had a lot to do with some of the darkest moments in Italy. Let's not forget also that Steve Pitsnick was his agent and participated in the criminal activities that led also to Steve Pitsnick being investigated by the Italian authorities. There is all this information also, which I'm gonna bring up about Henry Kissinger, which I think is very important. So let me pick it up here. Of course, you are watching the Leo Zagami show with Leo and Christy Zagami. We are discussing the role of one of the most controversial figures of the last 100 years, because that's how long, from the beginning, he was controversial, I guess, from the very beginning. Maybe not when he was 10 but maybe from 15 years old onwards, when he arrived to America, he seemed in some way to conquer immediately the scene and become a very influential advisor to many
Did
presidents.
he have like some kind of ritual with the devil or something to do all this stuff?
He was a Sabbatian Frankist, and in fact, at one point, he will be excommunicated, and we will see that in a moment. But first, I want to show the case against Kissinger for the murder of Aldo Moro. Now, I assisted to a conference with the daughter of Aldo Moro, Maria Fide Moro, in 2000, and I think it was 2007, and this was at the Foreign Press headquarters in Rome. And basically, then there was various people from the Secret Service. They showed the intelligence apparatus showed some evidence that was whose secrecy was just had been disclosed. The top secret seal had been just disclosed for open disclosure, and one of these documents regarded also Kissinger, but most of all the testimony of the daughter and of Prince Ligeti, who said that the decision to murder Aldo Moro was made basically at the Bohemian Grove. Aldo Moro used to be Italy's prime minister, but of course he was a bit too left-wing, a bit too communist. And this number from 1982 of ER talks about what happened and all the connections that Henry Kissinger had with also the P2 and the lieutenant of Gelli at that time, Elio Sciollini. And basically, they discussed the decision to set off a bomb in Bologna was taken by the committee Monte Carlo during a meeting at the Hotel de Paris in Monaco. That's where the meetings of the Monte Carlo Lodge were made with Ezio Giunchiglia. In fact, Ezio Giunchiglia is also cited in these articles of Lyndon LaRouche, EIR. How you spell it? Air, I guess. The same issue. Gelli took charge of the implementation of the criminal plan. The following May, Gelli traveled to the Hotel Sheraton of Buenos Aires, accompanied by Sciollini, who has since, and of course, then without going to all the details of the Bologna massacre, here it says Henry Kissinger is a member of the committee Monte Carlo. Sciollini is, in fact, supplied a list of 400 names of persons belonging to the lodge. Among the members are party secretaries, big industrialists, important politicians, and so forth, along with personalities of the Trilateral Commission. Sciollini mentions also Kissinger, and of Masonry. And I was a member. A lot of people know that. I discussed it in my book, my involvement with the Monte Carlo Lodge. And Henry Kissinger used the Monte Carlo Lodge to then direct what happened with the Aldo Moro affair. But here there is more interesting things that we can discover about Kissinger membership in the new Masonic Lodge organized by Gelli in Monte Carlo is, as we shall see, current with the activities of the ex-Secretary of State and the United States, and above all with the relations with the P2 Lodge. According to American sources reporting in press articles, it was the U.S. National Security Council, directed by Henry Kissinger, that relaunched in 1969 the activities of the P2 Lodge. So Henry Kissinger was the guy behind Licio Gelli, behind Andreotti, behind the relaunch of the P2 Lodge. On June 16, 1981, the Rome Daily Paese Sera published an article by U.S. correspondent John Cappelli in which, among other things, one reads, 1969 will have been the year in which, at least according to good New York sources, the decision was taken by functionaries of the U.S. National Security Council staff to protect with a Masonic cover an association in substance was really to carry out a subversive shift in Italian politics. This role was then entrusted to a P2, which was already active in the field of business and investments. So this is, and of course, then it gives other things. The Masonic Lodge Committee in Monte Carlo appears to be the direct continuation of the P2 Lodge, because that's, and then it talks also about, of course, the Italian massacre and the train bombing, the one in Bologna and the one near Florence, and of course, all of this participated in the formation of the Monte Carlo Lodge, where Ezio Giunchiglia, who people might have seen with me in photos on the internet, and these people were all basically, it's no surprise that Leo Zagami has had some problems after these revelations now, because I exposed all these people, as you know, from 2006 onwards.
That was really brave.
And that was pretty brave, because these people are very, very powerful.
Well, they did give you a hard time, didn't they?
Absolutely, absolutely. But let's check out more, of course, in relationship to the Bohemian club, and of course what connects them with Henry Kissinger, because there is always some interesting videos here that I would like to show. I mean, of course, there is always some people that protest in front of the grove. This is from 2022.
Nation of care that begins the 2-week encampment, where the body of dull care, symbolizing woes and concerns, is burned on an altar in front of a big owl statue. When that ceremony ends, they all start to cheer and yell.
I would like to ask you, what do you draw as a conclusion from the speech of President Xi Jinping?
I think that President Xi's speech was of fundamental significance. It laid out a concept for globalization and some specific challenges and roads to a solution. But to me, the most important aspect was that it was an assertion by China of participating in the construction of an international order. One of the key problems of our period is that the international order with which we were familiar is disintegrating in some respects, and that new elements from Asia and the developing world are entering it. What President Xi has done is to put forward a concept of international order in the economic field that will have to be the subject of conversation and the substance of the creation of an evolving system.
If you don't like what we're doing, don't leave your house. And if you don't want your picture taken, don't leave your house.
This is, of course, more from encampments, arrivals, protests, and things that happened at the Bohemian Grove. As we are talking, of course, of Henry Kissinger, I wanted to show his friend Ezio Giunchiglia with me back in the days. Here, these are photos that have been there for ages. So you just go on in the internet and you find them. Here is Leo with the medieval Ezio Giunchiglia. But I mean, when it comes to Henry Kissinger, there is a bunch of things that can be said, and there is plenty of evidence about all his, and these are, of course, it's stuff that is being unclassified, and so it's safe to see. But there is plenty of stuff like this that indicates the manipulation games. I mean, of course, we all know what happened with Salvatore Allende and Pinochet. We all know what happened in the Middle East with his intervention that glorified his figure. And
I heard today that he extended the Vietnam War.
He extended
So I
it.
really don't like him for that.
Absolutely. I mean, the Vietnam War would have finished a lot earlier, for at least 4 years earlier, if it wasn't for him and of course Nixon, but it was mainly him then who continued in his war-mongering policies. And here you have also the information regarding Allende, and there is a lot of other stuff that is being unclassified, and so it's now possible to view all this, and probably there will be more coming out now that he's dead, and that we can finally maybe look into the truth of this guy who was put, as you can see on the cover of Spy magazine, with you know, as he also liked a lot the ladies, and
He liked the ladies?
He liked the ladies, and I remember,
Ew.
you know, but I remember there was an interview.
He's gonna have to pay them.
Yeah,
a lot.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. This was an article that I want you to read a little part of from Spy magazine, Christy, which is just let me find it. Of course, here, guys, it's always a little bit chaotic, but I will find it for you because I would like to Christy to read this one. Let's see if I can. Sorry, guys, I'm not so quick, but I will be. Here is Christy, who's gonna read us this little insight on the activities of one of the many years that Henry Kissinger was around at Monterey, in a depressed northern California town of 900, where the forest is so thick that some streetlights stay on all day long. Here we go.
Monte Rio is a depressed northern California town of 900, where the forest is so thick that some streetlights stay on all day. Its only landmark is a kick-ass bar called the Pink Elephant, but a half-mile away or so from the Pink, in the middle of a redwood grove, there is, strangely enough, a bank of 16 paved telephones. In midsummer, the phones are often crowded. On July 21st of this year, Henry Kissinger sat at one of them, chuffing loudly to someone. Sunshine, he called her, and Sweetie, about the pleasant distractions of his vacation in the forest. We had a jazz concert, Kissinger said. We had rope trick. This morning we went bird watching. Proudly, Kissinger reeled off the names of some of his fellow campers. Nick Brady, and his brother is here. Brady was the U.S. Treasury Secretary
and many
at the
other,
time.
without going in all the details. This was just a brief explanation of one of the many visits that, of course, Henry Kissinger did, and this was described in Spy magazine in November 1989. This guy, of course, is a war criminal and an enemy of mankind, as the Mises Institute puts it. The former Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, Henry Kissinger, is definitely somebody who can come in those categories. Kissinger, the Mises Institute says, likely had the most freedom to inflict damage under Nixon, and thus his greatest crimes were committed in the Vietnam milieu. Spencer, and just like you said, Christy, Spencer Ackerman this week efficiently sums up much of Kissinger's worst deeds in this passage, which maybe you can read.
The Yale University historian Greg Grandin, author of the biography Kissinger's Shadow, estimates that Kissinger's actions from 1969 through 1976, a period of 8 brief years when Kissinger made Richard Nixon's and then Gerald Ford's foreign policy as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State, meant the end of between 3 and 4 million people. No infamy will find Kissinger on a day like today. Instead, in a demonstration of why he was able to kill so many people and get away with it, the day of his passage will be a solemn one in Congress. And shamefully, since Kissinger had reporters like CBS, Marvin Kalb, and the New York Times, Heinrich Smith, wiretapped, newsrooms Kissinger was a practitioner of American greatness, and so the press lionized him as the cold-blooded genius who restored America's prestige from the agony of Vietnam.
An agony, though, that he created himself. So, I mean, he kind of created his own problems, and then, of course, he gave the solutions. He was a typical Illuminati in this case. But there is more to say about Henry Kissinger. Of course, today we are discussing all his various let's say his various troubles. There was also a religious trouble. At one point, Rabbi Marvin Alterman, which I often cite in my books, basically put together a ritual of excommunication for him, which was pretty controversial and actually attracted the interest of many people, because Rabbi Antelman had been very outspoken with his books, with his work about tracing the various offshoots of the Sabbatean Frankists and Illuminati groups and the origins of the Marxist, communist, and geopolitical and financial turmoil that we are still living to this day. And of course, the fact that he created this excommunication ritual is testified in a document. It's a very rare document. They sell it on the internet. Actually, they make you pay for it. I don't know, $33, and it's only a few pages. But it is a very interesting document. We have it here for you, and it's the excommunication document, which also explains why he was excommunicated, because he, of course, went on from marrying a Jewish woman to the second marriage, marrying a non-Jewish woman, but also not being respected. He went on and married her on a Saturday, completely being disrespectful. But aside from that, the actual excommunication was done also on the premises that there was, of course, Rabbi Marvin Antelman, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Rabbinic Court of America, who heavily criticized Henry Kissinger's approach. So there is some elements of this Rabbinic Court statement that was done, I repeat, against Henry Kissinger. Here it says, on Sunday. Can you read it?
On Sunday, June 20th, 1976, in a crowded hall at the New York Hilton Hotel, Henry Kissinger, Secretary of State of the United States of America, was formally excommunicated from Judaism. The religious ceremony was presided over by 5 rabbis, members of the Supreme Rabbinic Court of America.
As the court justice, it was my responsibility to execute into final and definitive form the writ of excommunication. This is, of course, Marvin is Antelman who is talking. And the actual excommunication was done, and he mentions here also the nefarious Illuminati, the Sabbatean Frankists, the connections. And so the decision was very controversial, but also a very felt decision by this rabbinical court. So it says here, now we assert in the name of Shem and Foresh, of the God of Israel, the Jewish people are a covenantal community. And so we find, and here you can read it, Christiane.
I can't really read that.
No? So we find, said Henry Kissinger, guilty of treasons, inactions, and in pronouncement in violent repudiation of Israel's Brit covenant with God, in that they publicly challenge God's gifts of his land, of his people, and whosoever repudiates the Brit covenant is to be cut off from his people. So this was very serious. It says here also that Henry Kissinger is continuing pressure upon our people to continue to give up divinely ordained, liberated areas of our promised land, and thus blaspheme God and the holy nation of Israel before the world. So this was very serious. It had, of course, also political as well as religious implications. It says in this context, he is both cursed and excommunicated.
Cursed too.
Cursed too. As soon as the verse was completed, candles which had been lit before each rabbi, representing and symbolizing the illumination of Henry Kissinger's soul, were individually extinguished. It was a heavy ritual. The shofar was blasted, and the rest of the Hebrew charge of Sherem was completed.
Yikes.
So he was forever cursed and excommunicated. This to prove to you that the Jewish community is not all, to be blamed for all the evils of the world. There is the Sabbatean Frankist element. We say it over and over again. I write it in my publications. But this growing anti-Semitism, this growing rubbish with the conspiracy theories out of this world, still talking about the Khazarian rubbish and all the rest. No, we need to stick to the truth, guys. There is a war within Judaism. There's a war within Christianity. And so it's very important that you support our show so you can finally know the truth, because these people who talk here today, even in the alternative media, they really don't know what they're talking about. And it's sickening to me to see this growing anti-Semitism, which unfortunately was created also by people like Henry Kissinger, who is just like George Soros, somebody who is Jewish, but is really far from being a rightful Jew, as far as you can get, because he's a Sabbatean Frankist, an heretic. Without going back in all the details of the Sabbatean Frankist heresy, because you can simply Google them and you will find them. I hope so. We did. I think we should do probably another show in the future, because it seems like people don't understand. But there is definitely a book on Sabbatai Zevi by the famous Gershom Scholem that you can get, and maybe you can learn a few things.
Maybe some people just like to sit in their hate.
People have a tendency to intellectual laziness, but you can't have intellectual laziness when we are discussing these subjects. Either you want to fight the New World Order, the Illuminati, the Jesuits, the Sabbatean Frankists, or either you want to play into basically the proliferation of lies that continues to this day, and glorifying either one side or the other. It doesn't, it's obvious that the Sabbatean Frankists have orchestrated this whole thing, and that as soon as it's possible for them, they will kick out of power Netanyahu and put socialists there. This is obvious. Netanyahu himself, though, fall into the trap. His intelligence services, of course, have been corrupted from within, from the Sabbatean Frankist element, which is the same element which you see in Tel Aviv in all those progressive marches and whatnot. So I would like to go back, though, to discuss more of this power player of the New World Order, which was, of course, Henry Kissinger. My cousin was his bodyguard at one point, as you know.
Yeah.
Yes. And when he finished being his bodyguard, Henry Kissinger, as a gift, gave him this.
And now whose bodyguard is he?
Yeah, well, we're allowed to say that, but whatever. In any case, he was the bodyguard of Henry Kissinger. And when they needed his new client, who he takes care of for.
Did you say it?
No, better not to say it. But in any case, we can say that Henry Kissinger gave him this plaque at the end of his service for him, which is like a super secret service thing that you can basically share all over the world, and basically it's like more than a sheriff or anything, or any kind of FBI. It's just like a plaque with.
I don't understand your cousin.
I don't know. Well, he works. He does his job.
Well, that's your family right there.
Yeah, that's your family. Well, what can you do? What can you do? Unfortunately,
you're in it, but you're not.
But I'm not, because I decided to come out of that. And so I hope people appreciate that. They used to appreciate the fact that Leo Zagami came out of the Illuminati, came out of the New World Order that was making these revelations. These days, they don't
even have you.
They don't even have me on InfoWars anymore. Alex Jones, people are asking me why Alex Jones doesn't have me on. It's his problem, not my problem. If people don't want to hear the truth and want to continue hearing lies and from other disinformants, like, for example, Steve Pitsnick, because Steve Pitsnick was working for Henry Kissinger. I want to show you something about Steve Pitsnick because, of course, here we're talking about a guy who's been very controversial, and I want to, I mean, Steve Pitsnick is, as you know, somebody we see often on InfoWars and so on, but he used to work for Henry Kissinger, and he assumed the role of Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Henry Kissinger.
So how can anybody trust that?
How can I don't know. I mean, people are demented.
How can you trust? Well, look what happened. You know, his information that he was giving on January 6th
but
wasn't
also
very good.
and also on the Sandy Hook shooting wasn't very good, because that's it.
People need to change their advisors.
He was the consultant of the United States, but Steve Pitsnick, that was made Deputy Secretary Assistant under Henry Kissinger, and he was sent in that capacity to Italy when they murdered then Aldo Moro. So he took care of that murder, and he admitted it in a book, actually. So, I mean, there is plenty of accusations, of course, against Steve Pitsnick. It's irresponsible. I mean, we're not talking about somebody that can tranquilly going down to Italy now, and no. This guy is responsible. So let's show a little bit this connection we showed with Henry Kissinger. This guy was prime minister. He was kidnapped by the so-called Red Brigades. They were terrorists that were actually controlled behind the scene by the Gladio and the stay behind operation. The people from the P2 Lodge and everybody else control everything at that time in Italy. And they control also this kidnapping. And at one point, there was the intervention of Steve Pitsnick, because as he arrived, there was Pitsnick, a Harvard-trained psychiatrist. I hope I can put it here. It says, but sorry, guys, I have to put it on another... maybe on another browser, yes, because that one doesn't really work that well. So I'm going to do it like this. I can show you a moment this important role that Steve Pitsnick played for Henry Kissinger by going to Italy and directing behind the scenes the murder of the prime minister back then. Now, I don't particularly agree with Aldo Moro's policy. He wanted to kind of bring a repacification between the communists and the forces of the Christian Democrats. So this was perceived by Henry Kissinger as a big problem.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you said that he worked with Nixon. He worked with both sides.
Who worked with Nixon?
Kissinger.
Kissinger worked with Nixon, sure.
Yeah, so he wasn't necessarily a Democrat or a Republican.
But his tendency was socialist. A lot of people have recognized that he was a socialist. So that was something a bit controversial when you are working also with the so-called conservative. But in reality, he was simply an Illuminati kingpin of sorts. See, prosecutors in Rome said there is serious evidence suggesting Steve Pitsnick, a former State Department international crisis manager, participated in the murder that shocked Italy. Moro was kidnapped at gunpoint by the Red Brigades, and all this went down in Italy under the direction of Henry Kissinger. Why doesn't Steve Pitsnick come online here and talk about Henry Kissinger? Because, of course, there is a lot of dirty secrets that probably doesn't want people to expose. I mean, Steve Pitsnick definitely did some very bad things, because wherever he goes, he lays his hand and he brings disinformation, lies, manipulation, psyop, psychological operation. The guy, let's not forget, Henry Kissinger wasn't stupid to have him as his assistant, deputy assistant. I mean, he was, first of all, apart from the fact he's himself a Sabbatian Frankist born to Russian Polish, I think that he has a Sabbatian Frankist inclination, even if he might not be Jewish. He might definitely be a Sabbatian Frankist by inclination. And there is also the fact that he worked in the field of mind control, of psyops, of psychological operation, and so it's definitely he actually in 1992 Pixnick told Newsday that his professional opinion of President George H.W. Bush was clinically depressed, because he himself is somebody who was affiliated as a psychiatrist to the National Institute of Mental Health. So you can imagine, I mean, so why do you send a psychiatrist to take care of a security issue in Italy with the kidnapping of prime minister? It's all
That's really
a manipulation game. And Henry Kissinger was definitely somebody who had a lot to do with all this, and he was always in the business of manipulation. Let's see more of Henry Kissinger with Klaus Schwab at Davos 2017.
Thank you very much, Jeff Cutmore from CNBC. And I'm delighted to see you, Dr. Kissinger, on the screen. And for me, it's a very moving moment, because actually I met Dr. Kissinger the first time exactly 50 years ago at Harvard. Dr. Kissinger, you have been back a number of years here in Davos. I remember
emotional moment for Dr. Ivo.
Remember also our discussion, and many participants reminded me also today of the discussion we had 4 years ago on this stage. Thank you so much for making yourself available to discuss with the audience here in Davos, with which you are quite familiar, to discuss with you on the day, on a historical day, for the United States and for the world, to discuss with us the state of the world. And Dr. Kissinger, I just mentioned it's a historical date, but many participants here in Davos felt that the speech of President Xi Jinping.
So then you have, it talks about Xi Jinping. We had that already. But what he says about the Middle East might be also very interesting.
Partnership, which has been so much a key element of our world order. Do you see this partnership threatened? And what would be, I come back to this, what would be your advice on the one hand to the Europeans, on the other hand to the new American president, in order to safeguard
that point he was talking about Trump, because it was 2017.
Of 50 years ago to the problems of the current period. Not the importance of these institutions, but how an Atlantic partnership would operate in the face of challenges that are entirely new.
And he was actually already talking about ChatGPT in the age of AI. I mean, this guy, up until the very end, 100 years old, he was publishing books. I think he published another book after this one that I purchased a couple of years ago. How does he do it? This book where he talks about ChatGPT and AI. I mean, this guy knew things about what is happening right now. That, I mean, he went this year, he went to the Bilderberg conference. And he was there at the Bilderberg conference discussing the AI with Sam Altman and all the from ChatGPT, and this is something. I mean,
is he friends with that Harari guy?
Of course, he's friends with Harari. Of course, he's friendly with Harari. A secretive annual meeting attended by the world's elite has AI top of the agenda. And we know recently what happened with Sam Altman. He went and then he came back. He was called back after all the controversy. Apparently, there is a mysterious letter in which the AI is threatening mankind. We don't know much about it, but this was basically another event. And of course, the mainstream media said spark conspiracy theories similar to those leveled against high-level meetings like World Economic Forum, Davos. Sure. I mean, what are these people doing? Especially the Bilderberg Club. This year they discussed AI, banking system, China, energy transition, Europe, all the rest. And of course, with the presence of Henry Kissinger. This is obvious. You know, you have to have Henry Kissinger amongst all the participants. Here he is.
He's 100 years old.
But still, he was until the end. You see, the tech titans will be joined by political heavyweights, including former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, NATO Secretary Jens Stoltenberg, and then the foreign minister of the idiotic country of Ukraine, Dmitry Kuleba, for a range of discussions spanning international relations, trade, energy, and finance. Up until the end, this guy hold the key position, and Joseph Ratzinger wanted to make him the Pope advisor. At one point, there was circular. I remember I was working with Greg Zismansky on a piece on the Vatican, and this information came out from credible Vatican sources that they wanted to call Henry Kissinger as but of course he's not Catholic, so I mean he's not even a traditional Jew like we showed. He was excommunicated, but still they had immense power. So I mean it's sad to see all this, but today I think we are digging a little bit deeper, because of course we can all say Henry Kissinger was a communist. Of course he was a socialist, a communist. He pushed this left-wing ideology. But if you want to dig a little bit deeper, today we saw he was involved with every secret club operation and everything along with it.
I am just so perplexed. He's
Why?
not good looking. So he doesn't seem to have much magnetism, but maybe he does. I don't know.
At the time, maybe he was younger. Maybe when he was young.
I don't think that guy was ever good looking.
No, he was never.
And then he didn't have money, so he couldn't like buy his way. So what did he do to get? He came to America as an immigrant. But
I want to show you something.
How did he get so powerful? That's what I want to know. What did he do? Like from the early ages.
What kind of rituals
Yeah,
he
I
did?
just don't understand. I think he did something really.
No, let's discuss seriously his view of the world. The guy was, like I said, a Machiavelli on steroids, who regarded actually Machiavelli as moderate compared to other views. And we're talking about I mean, he was basically on top of everything. And so I would like Christy to read The Challenge of Nuclear Proliferation, which is something that, of course, he was part of, the fact that he was a strategist when it came to nuclear proliferations, and he discusses them profusely here in this book. But yeah, then he discussed cyber technology and the world order already in this book, and then he followed up. But yeah, cyber technology and the world order. Maybe you can read this first paragraph and see what he says.
Okay. For most of history, technological change unfolded over decades and centuries of incremental advances that refined and combined existing technologies. Even radical innovations could, over time, be fitted within previous tactical and strategic doctrines. Tanks were considered in terms of precedents drawn from centuries of cavalry warfare. Airplanes could be conceptualized as another form of artillery, battleships as mobile forts, and aircraft carriers as airstrips. For all their magnification of destructive power, even nuclear weapons are in some respects an extrapolation from previous experience.
Okay, and I want to show you a passage which sees Henry Kissinger for the first time, to my knowledge, being uncomfortable.
Does he like to dress in drag?
Well, I mean, there were a lot of people dressed in drag. I'm going to show something now from the Bohemian Grove, but check out this passage here.
I believe that Henry, in a way, had an inferiority complex, and that one of the things that drove him to be so good at everything he did was, in fact, that underlying insecurity.
And now comes the question, which is...
Well, that's not a subject.
The ladies, I want to discuss the ladies. Huh? Why don't we discuss the ladies?
In truth,
Huh?
as our relationships, it was mutually agreeable.
With who? With the hookers?
And I don't know in a way it was unusual. And it was certainly done discreetly. But it was. And I was not married at the time.
Is he talking about going with prostitutes?
Oh, these
But
ladies.
you enjoyed this society?
The society. There's a lot of horses outside the Bohemian Grove.
I did it over some months. I obviously must have enjoyed it within limits.
With limits?
But
no
let's go to another subject.
I don't know. He seems corrupted.
Well, it's uncomfortable, eh?
He's pretty
In the fall
uncomfortable.
of 1973, Nixon gave Kissinger a second job, Secretary of State. Months later, he got married for the second time to a smart, wealthy woman, also working in the political sphere.
Afterward, the reaction in the Jewish community was very, very unpleasant in many ways. It was bad enough that he was marrying a Gentile, but worst of all was that it was on a Saturday.
Kissinger departed for his honeymoon with Nancy. The press tagged along.
So you took everybody by surprise by getting married. How sudden was it really?
We've been planning it for several weeks.
You were very famous for your acquaintances, female acquaintances. And do you believe that it was more of a campaign, a publicity campaign, rather than true?
I couldn't possibly admit this. A number of other bachelors are very grateful to me this way.
When he got married was that he went home at night. And I didn't have to stay there until 10 o'clock at night every night, cleaning up after him or whatever. So I was terribly grateful when they got married.
Cleaning up.
What?
He was
It
doing.
was a lull that didn't last long. In Washington, the Watergate scandal spread and reached Kissinger as both security advisor and
So there was all his involvement in the Watergate scandal, when at one point he basically said, why don't you give them $1 million and silence them? You know, I mean, he was like so corrupt. The guy was just like out of this world, corrupt. I think that today, though, we kind of gave you a full view of this gentleman, but still there is some things that can be picked up here and there from his concept of also of world order regarding America in recent years. So this first paragraph here.
No country has played such a decisive role in shaping contemporary world order as the United States, nor professed such ambivalence about participation in it. Imbued with the conviction that its course would shape the destiny of mankind, America has, over its history, played a paradoxical role in world order. It expanded across the continent in the name of manifest destiny, while abjuring any imperial designs, exerted a decisive influence on momentous events while disclaiming any motivation of national interest, and became a superpower while disavowing any intention to conduct power politics. America's foreign policy has reflected the conviction that its domestic principles were self-evidently universal and their application at all times salutary, that the real challenge of American engagement abroad was not foreign policy in the traditional sense, but a project of spreading values that it believed all other peoples aspired to replicate.
And now, let's go back to the Grove. The Grove was a place, really. I mean, what kind of place? I mean, here is George Bush in the Grove.
I'm still not interested in that.
No, but look how they dressed up for a speech about the CIA and intelligence with his spooks. I mean, what kind is this sense of humor that Bush and his CIA friends had? This was a discussion that was done in the Grove about...
They need to distract themselves from all their evil doings.
I mean,
and so they do these little things to distract themselves.
And then you have basically, now a lot of people are talking about, we're talking about the fact that only the publics at the Bohemian Grove, or at the Bohemian Club. No, we had even Jimmy Carter. We saw the recent passing of his wife. This was Jimmy Carter down at the Grove a few decades ago, in front of the lake, of the little lake where they do their ritual. And of course, we have also other images of from the Bohemian Grove activities. A lot of people dress up and drag. This is quite an extraordinary one. From the Bohemian Grove. And then we have, of course, Henry Kissinger giving a speech in front of the lake there, in one of the many speeches he gave, because he, I think, has been one of the more active Henry Kissinger. And then another image of Henry Kissinger here with all his friends at the Grove, right at the center. So you can see also the importance of his role in the encampment when they do the yearly encampment. You see, Henry Kissinger will take center stage.
Gee.
Next to him, you recognize this guy? General Palmer.
Oh.
And then there is a lot of people around here that you might recognize if you kind of, So this is Henry Kissinger. And let's go back. Let's go back to the Grove. What are they doing? What is he doing? He seems to think he's cool.
Of care that
he seems to think he's cool.
I think they all think they're cool.
I think they all think they're cool. Huh? The Leo Zagami show brought you today in the heart of the New World Order. And here we have, though, another book which I would like. Apart from, there is one thing, I couldn't find it in English because I have it here in, I have to find the English edition of this man, because Nixon at one point said a very important thing. He said, we need to find, he said, today's Americans will feel outraged if the United Nations troops will enter Los Angeles to restore order. But maybe tomorrow they will be grateful to them.
No, we won't. Not if
So he says we need to create a scenario in which, then we can obtain a one-world government. This guy was kind of very blatant, very open about it, like all his friends and buddies. Whoa. This point, we are reaching, of course, the end of our transmission, but we can still, before that, go into the age of AI and read something from this old Henry Kissinger, who was talking about the age of cyber warfare and AI.
Today, after the Cold War, the major powers in other states have augmented their arsenals with cyber capabilities whose utility derives largely from their opacity and deniability, and in some cases, their operation at the ambiguous borders of disinformation, intelligence collection, sabotage, and traditional conflict, creating strategies without acknowledged doctrines. Meanwhile, each advance has been paired with new vulnerabilities. The AI era risks complicating the riddles of modern strategy further beyond human intention, or perhaps complete human comprehension. Even if nations refrain from widespread deployment of so-called lethal autonomous weapons, automatic or semi-automatic AI weapons that are trained and authorized to select their own targets and attack without further human authorization, AI holds the prospect of augmenting conventional nuclear and cyber capabilities in ways that make security relationships among rivals more challenging to predict and maintain, and conflicts more difficult to limit. That is so scary.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's just, it's insanely scary, that whole thing.
Right to the end, this guy was pretty greedy.
Begins the 2-week encampment where
We are always, you're always going back to that grove. We are always trying to remind you that Henry Kissinger is watching us from below, not from above.
No way. They locked the door when he didn't even bother knocking. He just went, he took the elevator down.
So you see now that the thumbnail that I chose for the show wasn't so improper. You understood after the show how evil Henry Kissinger was?
Yeah, now I do.
Now you do?
Another evil person to think about.
Okay.
This world has more evil people showing up than anything.
So in the end, I think that this show today cleared for you the understanding of who Henry Kissinger was, and that was my intention, because Christy didn't really understand who Henry Kissinger was, and I think that now that you know,
I still don't understand how he came to America as an immigrant.
Okay.
And, as an immigrant, you're starting out, and you have to really struggle
but
to
with
get going.
with the support, of course, probably of an important
But what
family.
happened in that time? There's something happened then. Some kind of ritual or something. I don't know. He's very, very, very powerful, and I don't understand why.
He's very, very powerful. But you ask the right thing. How did he get there? I mean, it's definitely also the power of the will, no? I mean, this guy had...
Well, whoever he incarnated from must have been really evil. Maybe it's his previous lives all come together.
He came from Germany. He came from Germany. He arrived in America. And looking back at Henry Kissinger, maybe we can check out how these mainstream people present him to us, but we will never really understand why he became this US foreign policy giant if we don't analyze the fact that he was a member of this. He was a Club Bilderberg aficionado, one of the most active members. At the same time, he was a very active member of the Bohemian Club.
His bloodline?
He was a Jewish person and utilized, of course, his own connections within the Jewish world. I mean, he definitely had some connections, and born in Germany, arrived here in 1938 as a Jewish refugee from Nazi persecution. That would have given him at least a preferential route, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
That he somehow abused. He served in the U.S. Army, of course, and he became, apparently, in the U.S. Army, acquainted with military intelligence, just like his dear friend David Rockefeller. They started working together with Rockefeller. In fact,
so he made influential
Educated
friends.
at Harvard University, he became a member of one of the most influential secret societies within the university. He became then a consultant to government agencies, and then later on various think tanks, and then of course the presidential campaign of Nelson Rockefeller from the Rockefeller family. So he was very close to the Rockefeller family. And then, of course, then he was appointed by Nixon as national security advisor. He pioneered this realpolitik, which was basically do whatever it takes if your state requires it. And of course, you give an option to the enemy or even to your ally, but ultimately you have to always look at your own interest. And in a very Machiavellic way, he had no scruples, no ethic, and no morals. That's why today they can't say that he's a good guy, because his decisions had consequences around the world that brought millions of people to die, people to starve, politicians to be persecuted, others to rise to power. They shouldn't have never rise to power, like Pinochet, for example, but we can mention many others. The adherence to the realpolitik included, by the way, overlooking human rights violation by allies in every single situation. So, like, for example, nowadays, everybody practices realpolitik. Do you think when Xi Jinping came to San Francisco, they didn't practice realpolitik? They would have never invited him if they had to respect all the violation of human rights that Xi Jinping does in his own country, persecution of the Muslims in his own country, the Muslim minority, Chinese minority, and all the other, the fact that he's basically a dictator, like even Biden admitted. But that is done in the name of realpolitik. Realpolitik was created out of pragmatism, of realism, by Henry Kissinger. And it's basically a coercive, amoral, ultra-Machiavellian way. And Kissinger picked it up from people that came before him, but I think that like Otto Bismarck, but he was the one who, also with Zbigniew Brzezinski and others, really launched this important term. So maybe I think that you can read this description ultimately of the term that might conclude today's episode. The realpolitik, ladies and gentlemen.
The study of the forces that shape, maintain, and after the state of the basis of all political insight, and leads to the understanding that the law of power governs the world of states just as the law of gravity governs the physical world. Excuse me. The older political science was fully aware of his truth and drew a wrong and detrimental conclusion. The right of the more powerful. The modern era has corrected the unethical fallacy, but while breaking with the alleged right of the more powerful one, the modern era was too much inclined to overlook the real, can you read the rest?
Might of the more powerful and the inevitability of its political influence.
I'm going to keep my glasses here next time.
No, because this is something that I picked up from a book from Gruzan's Der Realpolitik, which basically is a book that Henry Kissinger followed very much from this guy, von Rocha, who used to be a German journalist and politician. So he was a knowledgeable guy. That is, I mean, you from actually studying his reflections on the character of nations in the course of history, you can learn a lot about the pragmatism and about the evil which is perpetrated no matter what in the name of the state and the priority that the realpolitik gives to, getting things done. Some people say that this, in a way, served the purpose, that he actually managed to help the Middle East after the Yom Kippur War get to peace later on. And in many other scenarios, they say that his attitude served as a way to balance things up. But of course, this is the word of the Illuminati, of the agents of this new world order, who have put in front of us this doctrine, which is a doctrine with no God, the doctrine which is clearly evil. And that's why we praise Rabbi Antelman for having excommunicated him from Judaism. Thank you so much for tuning in, and please, the names of our sponsors, who we will, of course.
Thank you so much for donating. Okay, Philippe Belair, Bruce Kodish, Lillian Porter, God's Truth War, Ellen Secatre, John Holtzel, Ivina Hamitman, Corey Chavez, Margarizada Minta, and Dennis Bolanos Enriquez.
Hello.
Very nice news. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody's a part of it.
You can support us with the purchase, of course, of my latest book that can be read without having ever read any of the other books, Volume 9. If you want to know more about Henry Kissinger, there is, of course, Volume 7, which is also available in a hardcover edition. And I would suggest you read Volume 7 because it's filled with information on Henry Kissinger. Kissinger.
With which we were familiar.
We are familiar with you, don't worry. Now you can meet your match in hell. It's called Satan.
Yeah,
that's how it is, I'm afraid, Mr. Kissinger. And now we can close the show. See you next week. Continue.
Let's do it. Okay,
what?
Do it. Like your trick that you do. Hey.
Why don't you give a kissy to Mama? Come on, give a kissy. Give him a kissy. Give him a kissy to Mama. Give him a kissy.
No, he won't do it.
No, he doesn't give.
Let's say it one more time.
Why don't you give him a kissy, Mama? Hey. Ah! He did it. God bless you all.
Bye, everyone. See you next week.
Have a great week. We are reaching Christmas and we're going to celebrate it all together because until the end of the year, we're going to continue exploring the Illuminati occult. And then next year, we will have a new project, new news project for our viewers, for our supporters, and for those who appreciate our work. Leo Zagami and Christy Zagami. See you next week.
Baby.
What is he doing?
Baby.
What is he doing?
Ooh, he's being vicious. He doesn't want to dance anymore. He wants to eat.
Okay. See you next week with a little bit more.